Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Austin. I'm with Doug Kouns, the president and co-founder of Veracity IIR, a private investigations firm located in Carmel, but does work throughout the state of Indiana. And this is
work nationally also.
Yeah, national. So yes, not just Indiana, but nationally too. And works with a variety of clients. Before we get into today's case, tell us about some of the clients that you work with at your company.
I would say most of our clients are attorneys who request our assistance in investigating civil matters of all kinds, disputes between business people, employment disputes, accident investigations, you name it. We also do business due diligence for like mergers, acquisitions, partnerships, that kind of thing. We do security consulting for corporations. We do missing people. Any kind of investigations are probably our primary activity. And then, like I said, some of the security consulting. We also do law enforcement training.
All right. And then you also, the first time we did this, we got a little bit into your background. You have 22 years experience with the FBI.
Right. So 22 years with the FBI, and then we're coming right around the corner on our second year as a private investigation company.
So last time we talked about a case involving fraud, and this time we're going to get into, this is a little more violent case, so if somebody doesn't want to hear gruesome details, just here.
Yeah, and I'll tone it down. I'm not going to share every little thing.
But we're going to talk about what you described as one of the worst scenes that you ever saw during your time with the FBI.
Right.
The 2002 case, and you were with the Sioux Falls office at the time, and it involves a bank robbery that led to the death of 5 people in Nebraska.
Right.
From there, I'll let you take it away and tell us about this case that you worked on.
Sure. So I remember the day well. I was working on something else. I don't remember what that was, but I got a call from my boss who said we had been requested by the Omaha office to go down to a little town called Norfolk, Nebraska. I looked this up recently. It's most famous for, that's where Johnny Carson is from. So I've been through the FBI's evidence response training course. It's a 2-week program. And our squad secretary had also been through that. So she and I, we jumped in a car and just went. It wasn't like, go pack a bag and get down there when you can. It's like, stop what you're doing and head south. So it was a pretty long drive, and most agents keep what we call a go bag in the car. So I already had a change of clothes, but so we headed down, and the robbery had occurred, I think around 9 o'clock in the morning, right after the bank opened. And I think it was like a 3-hour drive for us to get there. So we're getting there 5-6 hours afterwards to process the crime scene. And I'd seen dead bodies before and crime scenes with a lot of blood and gore, but I was always prepared. Going in, you kind of have to get in.
Usually, when you show up, you know what happened.
Yeah, you've got to get your game face on. You kind of prepare for what you're going to see, and also most of the crime scenes. I'd only been an agent for 4 years at that point. Most of the crime scenes that were like that had a story with it that kind of made sense. It was a dispute over something, and knives or guns were drawn, and people got hurt. But anyway, we get down there, and I didn't expect for the bodies to still be there on the floor. I figured it's hours later. They've probably taken them away. So we go in, and I see immediately one person down on the floor, and that was the customer that had been there. And I look to my left. There's an office to my left as you go in. And that was either the manager, the branch manager, or the loan officer. And to my right, there's a person on the floor. And that was the other, the loan officer or the main, I can't remember which side was which. I'm like, oh, okay, they're still here. Shell casings all over the floor. And the front door was broken. And then before you go into, you have to gear up, so you put on your Tyvek suit and booties and gloves and all that so you don't contaminate the crime scene. You have to have a crime scene log so you know everybody that's been in and out of there. And then we entered all the, continued in. This is what you kind of see just peeking in. So there's like double doors, I believe, like a foyer. Sorry, I got a little bit of an allergy thing going today. And then, once we get in there, we can also see that there's two people behind the desk or the counter, I guess is a better word. Two tellers, I believe. One was male, one was female. The female was leaning up against the wall, kind of, like she was, just there. And they had all been shot, some multiple times. And, there was blood. There actually wasn't a lot of it. There was like a small pool of blood under each one. One of I think the assistant manager did not die instantly. So you could see where the EMS people had worked on her for a little bit, like some medical litter, like packages and stuff from whatever they used to try to revive her, but none of them made it. So this all happened. We later found out in a span of about 40 seconds.
40 seconds. And they were all shot.
Yeah. So, and I read some of the news stories later because we were just there. We didn't do the investigation other than the crime scenes. And I say scenes because there ended up being 3 of them that we processed that day. When they went in, I think what happened is one of the employees hit an alarm button, and they knew that the alarm button had been shot because they didn't even get any money, or the alarm button had been pushed. So once the alarm went off, I think they panicked, just started shooting. Another customer had started to come in, and they took a shot at that person. It got him in the shoulder, but they were able to run off. And then they had there's 3 gunmen that went inside. Jose Sandoval was the ringleader. And then there was a lookout. And I think when the shooting started, the lookout took off in the getaway car as well. So they go in and shoot everybody, bail, and they're like, oh, our ride's not here. And I don't know if you want to stop and ask questions because it's getting ready to move on to the next phase of what happened.
When you're at the scene, I'll be honest, I watch TV shows is where I get my information from. So a lot of what I know probably isn't accurate. I was a crime reporter for a newspaper, but not FBI crimes and nothing like that. I did see a dead body or 2 as a crime reporter, but probably nothing in the volume that you've seen. So when you're coming in and looking at a crime scene, you said there was shell casings everywhere.
Yeah.
How many rounds were fired off, you think?
I'd be guessing here, but there was dozens. An average. They look to be 9mm, if I'm not mistaken. Average, handgun's going to have probably 8 to 12 rounds in it. And
how many weapons would you say?
I think they all had handguns.
They all had pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So, but there were multiple guns being fired at once.
Right.
Yeah. And so the article that I saw, and I know newspaper articles don't always get everything right. Sometimes they make mistakes, or sometimes they're not always given accurate information. But it said they were all shot in the head. Was that so? A barrage of bullets in the heads happened to get shot, or was this a military style precision? What are we talking here?
Well, there's not much distance, so I think that's right. I think they were all at least shot in the head, but I think multiple rounds.
Other places too, right?
Yeah. I don't recall. I don't recall that specifically, so I don't know if that's 100% true or not. Some of them were for sure shot in the head. I know the woman behind the teller she was. You could see I remember distinctly the bullet hole and the splatter on the wall behind her. It's one of those things where, again, I've seen some of the stuff like that, but these are people that looked like they could be your parents or your friends, or they're well dressed, they're doing business. The customer was there to get cash to go visit her daughter at a college, so I think Lincoln, Nebraska, and they almost looked like they could just get up. It wasn't like a scene I had ever seen where it was, violence was expected. And it's just one of those cases that, as an investigator, it haunts you. Why? There was no reason for that to happen.
So do you feel that when you see the scene and just the bodies there, that you can almost kind of see how it went down? You can see the story.
Yeah, kind of.
What are the things that help? I mean, from this scene, you could probably see that there was probably a panic that occurred, correct?
Yeah, something went wrong almost immediately. And I think for them, I'm pretty sure it was somebody pressed the button and, alarms going off. I think most bank robber, in my experience, I've never seen one happen like this. I think most would have just turned around and bailed.
Yeah.
Again, they weren't going to get any money. So what's the point in killing people? It just didn't make sense. I don't know if it was drug fueled or what, but it just was very disturbing to me. So you immediately then have to get your game face on and prepare yourself for what you got to do. Mm-hmm. So you've got to recover, you got to mark and photograph all those shell casings. You can actually lift footprints from the floor with a Mylar sheet, like balloons are made of. If you connect that to an electricity source, it will electrostatically lift dust prints off of the ground and you get footprints. So you got to be careful. It took several hours to process that scene. So, because you might get a fingerprint off of a shell casing, people don't think about as they're loading that magazine, they're putting a perfect thumbprint on brass, which is pretty easy to lift, because we don't know who did this yet. At the time, they're not caught. It's still a whodunit.
So that's a good point. So, I mean, obviously with a bank robbery, you don't have time to clean up a scene afterwards if someone was killed. I know other premeditated murders, someone may have a plan for getting rid of DNA or fingerprints or evidence in order to make it harder to identify them. They always slip up somewhere, but at least they have a plan. But it sounds like with someone panicking, and then on top of panicking, time is of the essence for them to get out, especially with the ride leaving. Immediately, you're probably thinking, okay, they've left some markers behind that will identify them.
Right. So you have to do it's meticulous work processing a crime scene in the right way, and so you got to log everything, photograph it, and then you're done. So
important question. So we're looking for things like if they have fingerprints or footprints, but most banks would have surveillance footage.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the usefulness of surveillance footage when it comes to identifying or prosecuting.
Well, it's very important. And back in those days, not everything was digital. People were still using tape. Mm-hmm. And more often than not, people would get complacent and they wouldn't use new tapes. They would have like a dozen of them or 6 of them, and they would cycle them. So when this one's full, we just go back and they just keep running. So
degrade?
Yeah, they degrade. And when you record over and over again, the quality of those videos goes down with it. So oftentimes and I don't recall this one. I actually didn't watch the video, but in other bank robberies, you're about ready. They finally look to where you can see them, and then it's like grainy and you can't recognize anything, and it's disappointing. But it doesn't.
You can get height.
You can get height by using just basic math and trigonometry and figuring out, okay, we know that this piece of furniture is 6 feet tall, and here's this person standing next to it, so they must have been about 5'10". You can get it within about an inch. You can look at if they're not wearing a mask. You can get hair color. You can get mannerisms are almost as important as anything. Sometimes just the way somebody moves. Sometimes people will recognize that, or an article of clothing. We've done bank robbery investigations where once we catch them, we can match the sweatshirt that, a lot of times we'll wear a hoodie, and we'll match that sweatshirt to the video, even if you can't quite see their face.
And then you can, where the bullets are shot, can you identify how tall a shooter is based on generally how someone would hold a gun and their height, or is that more difficult?
I don't know about that one.
Maybe I'm watching too much.
Yeah. Those crime scene shows are good and bad. Sometimes they lead the public to having unrealistic expectations of what we can do in real life. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes it helps you because the bad guys don't know that you can't really do that. So if you can't get them to confess, or you don't have any other evidence, you can bluff them. I've used this before where I told the guy who was claiming to not have been somewhere that I could just call up the NSA and we'll download the satellite videography, and then I'll know if you were there or not. So do I have to go through all that trouble, or do you want to tell me that if you were there? I was there. And we can't do that.
Before we move on to this, I want to say one little off-topic tangent. We were talking about video surveillance footage. I saw something interesting the other day, and a friend's comment that there was a theft, I believe, in Carmel somewhere, and they caught the people on surveillance camera.
Yeah, I saw that in the news this morning.
They were releasing. But here's the interesting thing, the one that I saw. So they were caught on surveillance camera stealing something. One person was wearing a mask, the other person was not. And I saw a comment on Facebook I thought was funny. It was, how stubborn do you have to be on the masks that you won't even wear one when you're stealing things?
Funny. That reminds me, we're getting off topic, but that reminds me of another one where the bank had a sign on the door as you came in and said, please remove your hat and mask. Mm-hmm. So the bank robber had on his ski mask, and he read the sign, and he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. He took it off.
They should have put up a sign, don't rob the bank. Oh, okay. I guess I won't rob the bank.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to move on to the next part. So you were at the scene, and the next part of the investigation was more just you. This is from you following it, but tell us a little bit about what happened next when they were able to.
I'll try to tell the story coherently. So as we're processing the scene, we get called, and they're asking if a few of us can break off to go process another scene. And what had happened is the robbers fled. They didn't have their getaway car and driver, so they broke into a house near the bank and stole a Subaru Outback, I think it was. And even back then, this was the early days of OnStar or something like it. I think it was OnStar. So whoever was conducting the investigative portion of this contacts OnStar, explains the situation. They dial up their system and locate this car, and it looked like it was in a pond out in the country. And the paper says it was in a pond, but it wasn't. It was right next to it. So me and a couple of the agents, let's see, me and Matt went, another agent in our office. And I think a couple of the local or state guys went with us too. So we went out to this pond expecting to have to call in equipment to retrieve it out of the water, but there it is sitting. And so we call, we look in it. We don't want to contaminate this crime scene either. But now we know at least what they're, a little bit what's going on. They're made their getaway and they ditched this car. Okay. It's crime scene process. We just had it towed to a garage so we could do it later. But we also know the only place they could have gone was the farmhouse that was there on the property. The pond was on on the property. So we figured out who the house belonged to. There wasn't anybody home, but we could see that it had been broken into. Got a hold of the owner, and he told us that there should be a pickup truck in the garage, and there was not. So now we know. I can't remember what, I think it was a green Ford, if I'm not mistaken, but I would have to look that up. It's not really relevant. But anyway, we've got the description and license plate number of the vehicle they're now in, and they don't know that we know that. And we just put out an APB, all points bulletin, so all law enforcement gets this to be on the lookout, also known as a BOLO, B-O-L-O, for a green pickup truck bearing plate, whatever. And sharp Nebraska state trooper spotted the car at a gas station getting gas and confronted them. Surprisingly enough, there was no gunfire, and he arrested them, and that was that.
So one interesting thing on this case, when I read, there was some concern in the city's Hispanic community that there might be some because all of the suspects who were arrested were in fact Hispanic. Was that something that you were aware of, or I mean, that's what I read in an article. So.
We didn't know until they were arrested, obviously, okay, who it was, and so the possibility of backlash towards the Hispanic community became a concern after the fact, but we were gone by then. We processed the bank, we processed the 2 vehicles, we processed the farmhouse where the truck was stolen.
Yeah.
And that was our role.
So prior to that, what kind of information was released to the public to try to help them catch the suspects? And just in general, I know sometimes law enforcement is careful about what they release. They want to release enough to catch suspects, but not all their cards, correct?
Right. And that one was solved within a few hours, which isn't always the case. And so there really wasn't even time to put out stuff to the public. I think every small town, everybody knew the robbery had occurred. But, we didn't have any video clips to release or pictures. And then by the time we could have had that ready, it was already solved. So that nothing really went out. But you're right, though. It's always kind of a double-edged sword where you want to put out some information that'll be helpful. Say we didn't catch them right away, but we have pictures. You would want to get those out. So if anybody knows who they are or where they are, hopefully they would call us. But you don't want to release every detail of a case because it can convolute things when you do your interviews. You want to make sure that the witnesses that you talk to and the subjects are telling you what they know and not what they read somewhere already.
And what you're often dealing with on a longer, this is ours, but a longer search for someone is unhelpful or false reports or calls, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think anybody ever does it maliciously, but a lot of times they're trying to be helpful, but you get some just ridiculous calls sometimes, and it's just it's burning up your limited time that could be spent following up on real leads. So if somebody calls me and says, "Hey, I heard that the bank was robbed by a Hispanic male, and I just saw one at Target about an hour ago." Sure, thanks for calling.
Yeah, and that's always led to a bigger debate too. So when I was a newspaper reporter, every newspaper has their own policy, but there is always a debate about whether to include racial descriptions in a newspaper article when talking about a suspect of a crime. And I think the policy that we had when I was at the newspaper was if that was your only identifier, then we didn't include it. If you just said, "Hey, who was the person who committed this crime?" Well, it's a 6 foot tall, medium black man wearing a hat.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
you get a lot of that. You get a lot of that, and especially with terrorism cases. after 911 and stuff, again, we're getting off topic, but if you were Middle Eastern looking at all, somebody was calling on you, and it's just how it is.
Yeah, and then you also wonder, at least from a newspaper perspective, are you adding to a negative perception about people when you put those things out there, but it's not helpful? But if someone says, hey, I've got a great description, this is a African-American male, he's got a scar on his face, he's got green hair.
Yeah, I mean, that you need
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It narrows it down by half when, generally.
Although I'd probably start looking for Dennis Rodman if that was the description of green hair. Well, anything else on this case before we get into any other topics today?
So, I mean, that's just one that, like I said, has stuck with me over the years as being particularly disturbing. Luckily, well, not just luckily, but just good investigative work. They were caught, and I think three of them got death sentences, and a fourth one got multiple life sentences. And I don't think they've executed them at this point. I think they're still under appeals and all that, for just based on the, kind of refreshing my memory on some of the details by going onto the internet. But I don't know, and as I was doing the research, I'll share this if I can, kind of experimenting with this. This is the share screen,
and then I'll add it to the stream.
Sure. So this is that was the ringleader, Jose Sandoval, and I recall in earlier pictures he did not have this teardrop tattoo. Mm-hmm. And I think most people know, or maybe they don't. A teardrop tattoo signifies that you've killed someone, and doesn't you can't tell by a picture, but he doesn't appear to be. I don't know how you would tell. It just.
So that tattoo, did he have that prior to the?
No, that was my point. He did not have that prior, and now he does.
So even though it was kind of a panicked, he didn't set out to kill someone, that tattoo, does that almost signify it's a point of pride or something?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think it's you wear that in prison like a status symbol, like that somehow elevates your status in that culture, which
I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose people think you're tough, but how tough is it to pull a trigger and ruin family? I mean, they had kids. It just makes you sick.
And then, not to joke about it, but if you're really tough, you're going to get a bigger than the tiniest tattoo. That's
I guess.
But I don't have any tattoos, so I can't say how much they hurt. So, any tattoos, Doug?
We'll keep that a secret.
Okay, we'll keep that a secret. Just because we have some interest on social media about it, I know you can't talk about it much, but you are working on a case involving Chance is the name that I keep seeing.
Yeah, that just came up the other day. It's kind of a weird thing. This young man in western Nebraska, kind of up in that corner where Wyoming and South Dakota meet, just walked away after an argument with some family. And that's been about a year ago. And I guess I don't know how they found us, but a local guy here that does a podcast, a true crime type podcast, Crime Pursuit podcast, something like that, found us. And, we're mostly former FBI agents here. I've got like 6 or 8 former FBI agents, retired, a couple of locals and analysts and whatnot, asked us if we would be interested in investigating that. And, we're a private company, and I'm like, we're in Indianapolis, we're not in Nebraska, but we'd be glad to review the case, see if there's any holes, add a fresh perspective to a stale case, and see if there's anything that we can do. And I said, but we are a private company. I can't afford to work these kind of cases for free. So he put out through all of his social network channels, a fundraiser, like a GoFundMe type thing. So we created a link that you could click on and donate. And in just a few days, they raised quite a bit of money, enough to meet our minimum retainer for such a thing. So we're going to dig into it. We're in the research phase right now. We're learning all we can about what happened, what investigation has been done. Again, if there's any holes, anything missing, anything that we can provide assistance to, we're not trying to second guess the local or state law enforcement that have already put a great deal of time and resources into this. It looks like they've done a lot. But again, it never hurts for a fresh set of eyes to take a look at something and see, hey, did you ever explore this? Or how about, did you think about that? Usually they're receptive to toss around those ideas. And if we can develop some leads or even some fresh media exposure, you never know what might happen. It's honestly, I've tried to communicate this. A missing person case that's that old is a long shot. I've always heard, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it makes sense to me. After about 48 hours, every day thereafter, your odds are cut in half. So you're looking at, a reverse curve of odds of success. So a little over a year later, I don't want to be pessimistic about it. I just want to be realistic about it. It's going to be tough, but we're going to look at it and hopefully we can do some good.
So yeah, and just in case anyone's watching, it's Chance Engelbert, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
5-year-old, and he's from Moorcroft, Wyoming, and he's been missing since July 6, 2019. So over a year, and it's a case that's really captured people's attention. The family is, I think, got a lot of sympathy from a lot of people, and people really are hoping that they can find out some answers.
Yeah, that's evident by the donations. Like we put that link out, and it took just a couple of days to get to a decent level. A lot of $10s and $20 donations, and the power of the crowd is evident, and that he must have been a well-liked person.
So if the public is, how do they help? I mean, they want to contact law enforcement and you, but how can they help if they know anything or want to be helpful on this case?
Well, they can call us. They can call the local investigators. That's probably the best thing to do, actually. If they have real information. We're not law enforcement anymore. We're private, and we just don't have the powers of government behind us to do what we do. So I would recommend just calling the local authorities or us. We'll make sure it gets to the right place. But like I say, if there's any, and I just saw a pop-up, and whoever that was is right. If there's any hope at all, that's better than none. And as long as there's a realistic chance that we're doing good, and we'll do what we can.
Well, thank you so much. We'll do more of these, and we'll talk about different cases from the past. And if we do get updates in Chance's case too, we will, because there's a lot of interest there. We'll keep people updated. So please tune back. If someone wants to contact your company, how do they contact you?
Well, we've got our website, and you can click on our email address, that service@veracityiir.com. Will eventually get to me. Our phone number is there. I'll say it anyway. It's 317-564-8383. And those are probably the two best ways. I get messages on our Facebook page as well. I'm sure you'll find us somehow.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, and we're going to do more of these talks. So sharing stories from the past, and hopefully maybe updating people on some of these current cases. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Take care.